the month of July, I also finished the entirety of the Empire of the Wolf trilogy. The first book being The Justice of Kings, the second one is The Tyranny of Faith, and the third and final book is The Trials of Empire. I read all three in July, and this is a little series review. So this is following an interesting narration style. So we're following a main character. His name is Conrad von Volt, and he is justice, so he is the right arm of the emperor, and he is judge, jury, executioner in one, and he travels around dispensing justice to the far reaches of the empire. And we're actually reading this from the perspective of his clerk, who at the time of the events of the story is like 19, 20 years old. Her name is Helena Sedanka, and she is like his scribe. She does a bunch of research for him to learn case law, essentially. And this is her reflecting back on events and writing them down. I loved this narration. I think Helena was a great vessel for telling this story. She often makes comments about her younger self, about, oh, I was so young and naive here, and you know, this was possibly the last time I would ever see this person, and it added great tension throughout the narrative, and I loved the writing and the execution of this story overall. This first book is about a murder mystery, and throughout the investigation of this murder, a large political plot is uncovered. This was excellent. This is on the edge of my seat. This is a very plot-driven story. Typically, I'm more of a character-driven reader, but there was enough plot in here to keep me hooked, and there was just enough character work to keep me invested, which is a great balance and hard to achieve for me personally, because I'm such a character person. In a lot of ways, Helena is a little bit frustrating in this first book because she is young and naive, and she is kind of behaving like the teenager she is in this book, but she herself as an adult is reflecting on that and talking about her failings and, you know, not giving herself any grace at all. This was excellent. I couldn't put it down. I read it in like 2 sittings. One to like dip my toes in, and then the second was just the entire rest of the book. I was so entranced, and then this really opens up into the rest of the trilogy. I gave The Justice of Kings 5 out of 5 stars. I was very impressed with this as a debut, and couldn't wait to keep reading. There is one thing I will say. So I don't like reading about cops. Go figure. Or even fantasy cops, essentially. So I was a little hesitant to pick this up. However, I don't view Conrad von Volt as a cop. He's much more of a lawyer. And the author of this book, Richard Swan, is actually a lawyer in real life. So it's actually really interesting reading about the ethics of law and who's making these laws and what's the morality there. Like, all of that seemed really authentic because our author is a lawyer. So this is more like a fantasy lawyer than a fantasy cop, if that's like what's holding you back from reading this. The second book, Tyranny of Faith, I liked, and I liked a lot, but I didn't like it as much as the first book. So in the first book, we're kind of in a small town. In the second book, we're in the capital of the empire, and more politicking happens. There is also a mystery that happens in this one, although it's not as drawn out as in that first book. This is where this tone kind of shifts from a fantasy mystery to a epic fantasy political machinations type story. And the one thing that frustrates me about the second book is that von Volt underestimates politics and the importance of politics. I won't spoil things, but he is so politically inept in this second book that he's very outmaneuvered very easily and very decisively. And as a political fantasy lover, it was really frustrating to read him being so dismissive of politics throughout, and then him just getting absolutely wasted. And Helena is like trying to get him to see that, but he is stubborn. And so this one was just slightly frustrating for me personally in that way, but I still really enjoyed, again, the plot and the characters in this sequel, and I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. The one thing I will also say about this series is, one, there's no on-page rape, which is great. It is like offhandedly mentioned, but that's it. But this does have other types of violence and gore, so I would, you know, be cautious going into it. This was right on the edge of my comfort level in terms of the gore and the violence. There were a couple scenes where I had to like, like the visuals are very poignant, and there are a couple visuals that I had to like stop and take a break from because they were so vivid and disgusting. So with that caveat out of the way, I'll talk about the third book. Without spoiling anything, let's talk about the Trials of Empire. And I'll be honest, this is like a 4-star. This is good. However, it's too short. This is like 60 or 80 pages less than the second book in the series, and I think it really shows. And in my opinion, if you're gonna write an epic fantasy, the final book has to be the thickest. The final book needs to be the culmination of events and character work and everything going on. It's really hard to pull that off in like 400 pages. And I feel like this final book was just way too rushed. Yes, it's plot driven and fast paced, so you know, I expect a fast clip to the narration and the narrative, but it's still, things were happening too fast. Things were getting wrapped up too quickly. The character work was one conversation of work that was, you know, built up over the entire first part of the series, and then it was over in one quick conversation in the end. So while I did enjoy this finale and think it was a good story overall, I do think this last one was rushed just a little bit. I liked what happens in this one. It gets dark, it gets more violent than the other 2 books, which is saying something, but I still liked it. I didn't love it, but I still liked it, and I highly recommend the series as a whole. And that was my little mini review of the Empire of the Wolf trilogy. What did you think? Are you interested in this trilogy? I would love to know all your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in another video of mine very soon.